And then so I'm working on that. I haven't pulled all of the benefits, which like Mary is one of them. I left all the benefits. But remember when they gave them also. Yep. Oh, she left those. Left them in there, so I gotta pull those out. There's a couple things that. That's right.
If I need.
Right, public. But Lorraine Stroop came in and talked to me this morning.
My daughter.
Yeah, so we're doing a.
Hey, how are you? Good, how are you?
Outside. Oh, yeah. How does she like? Yeah, so I'm gonna schedule a walk through.
What grade she do?
I stopped in on my way home last night.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just like.
Yeah.
When the.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
For the reporting. It's so cute.
Yeah.
Good, how are you?
Oh, good, thanks.
It's funny how it comes out.
Short of.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's white.
So this doesn't
You're gonna
say.
have to go out for-
Time goes.
Yeah. So now we got two people. We have an app.
Being like, you know.
Yeah, we're good. Oh, but what happens now? I originally lived over in London, I worked for the regional commission.
Trying to cut back.
It's a different kind of.
Good, how are you, sir? I need a new suit, and the only way they're gonna let me do it is by ordering this one, so I'm like.
No, not, nothing down there, and we have to. I mean, I'll do everything, but I don't.
That's all.
With their contract in space. And. Radiator, and so I'm just sitting by the side of the road, a little bit north of Marlboro.
Everything's decent.
Whatever you want.
I'm just like,
So I
literally, I
just-
haven't left.
Hot spots, waiting for the tow truck, grab my boots and breathe in there. I'm
But when you push it off, so that.
Bye.
Oh my God.
I just like a good thing, he's like, he's not here, he's like, car broke, we're okay, we're fine, just. Cause I can spend 2 hours of my work day sitting here and then reading.
Yeah, well, it's on here. Yeah.
All right, it's 12:04, so it's time is valuable. I think we'll get going. So thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. This is the my name is Matt Waitens. I'm the MTO coordinator here, and this is the NRPC Transportation Technical Advisory Committee meeting for Wednesday, January 14th. And we're going to do a round of introductions, and we'll go ahead and start with Ryan over here.
Brian, GIS NRPC.
Camille, National Transit System.
Jermaine, Town Administrator Wilton.
Jen Beauregard, Town of Pelham.
Hey, Jen. Thank you.
Kyle Fennell, Community Development Director in Milford.
Ben with Greater Town of Hudson.
Wayne Osborne, National Traffic.
Kabir Grill, Coordinator at NHES.
Mark Daughters Nashua.
Jared Kreffler, engineer, Town of Merrimack.
Donna myself, regional mobility manager here at NRPC.
Kathy Cash at NRPC.
Errol Borowitz, NRPC.
Mark Chamberlain, Town of Lamboro.
Jeffrey Allen, Town of Lineborough.
Eric Slosik, Town of Amherst.
Will Lute, Amherst.
Jamin Carr, NRPC.
Salem Quinn, NRPC. Emma Rarick, NRPC.
And I'll read off the folks that are in Zoom land. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Wendy Hunt, Greater Nashua Chamber of Commerce. Hello to my Amherst friends.
Thanks, Wendy. And Lee from Federal Highway.
Yep, good afternoon, everybody. Oops, good afternoon, Lee Wine, Federal Highways.
Actually, and I earlier saw Denise from DOT, but I don't see her out there anymore.
Yeah, she
so-
dropped off.
So. All right, so, there are agenda packets, in the back. If everybody that wanted one has one, I don't know if that's a chance, but.
Is there a sign-in sheet? I didn't see one this time.
No, we just do it ourselves now.
Okay.
Trying to make your life easier.
All right. So thank you for everybody being here. And to that point, we can now adopt several sets of meeting minutes, going back. And also, since we have no voting members out in Zoom land, we can adopt these by a roll call, which is a nice bonus.
Voice vote.
Oh, sorry, voice call. There we go. So we're gonna go with, so attachment 1 is,
Milo.
oh, and that's Milo. Staff.
Our office dog.
So the draft minutes from September 10th, I would put them on the table and look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, then you. Second. Wayne. Any discussion? All right, so for the September 10th meetings, all in favor of adopting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions. Okay, so we've got several abstentions. So we're good on that. All right, thank you. Attachment 2 is November meeting minutes, November 12th. So I'll ask for a motion to adopt the minutes from November 12th.
Move to accept.
Mark? Yeah, and a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ben. And all in favor of the November minutes?
Approved.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, thank you. Motion carries. All right, last set of meeting minutes is for last month, December, so I look for a motion to adopt those minutes.
Move to accept.
Mark, second?
Second.
Was that Wayne? All right, thank you. All right, in favor, say aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, so Jen, and so we're good. All right, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah, well,
Is there any way we can change the rule about if you're online, you're officially voting? Is that a rule from us or is it a
No,
state?
if you're a member and you're participating remotely, then you do get to vote. Just the folks who we now have online are not voting members.
Oh, so like if Eric, my compatriot from Amherst is on virtual and I'm here, he can still vote?
You could still vote. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought you couldn't vote.
Designate it to you.
Yeah.
It doesn't count towards a quorum.
Oh, that's it, okay. Well, can we change the quorum? The rule, or is that a state?
State law.
That's a state law. Okay.
So what's changing?
And I would also add.
And everything else.
Each community has one vote.
Yep.
All right, so thank you for all that, that's terrific. So, so the next, I'm gonna combine a couple agenda items here. So the next agenda item is tip amendment 3, and I'll do that, and then we'll do number 6, which is the January minor revision. It's discussions about you know, projects, so it makes sense just to kind of combine them. So. You can see that out there, right, Wendy? Thank you. All right. All right, tip amendment 3, this is attachment 4, so you can generally read along with that. Just if you want more detail, so. So this is kind of the agenda, talk about the planning process, summarize the, what the thresholds are for amendments, the proposed revisions, our staff recommendation and discussion and adoption, you know, the standard protocol that you're all pretty much used to. So we are updating the current tip, which is the 2025 through 2028 tip. Of course, it's the first 4 years of the New Hampshire 10-year plan. The tip and the 10-year plan are also a, you know, component of our long. So the process so far, in December, the draft amendment was released by DOT, and we reached out to the communities in the region that were impacted for any concerns they had. Didn't hear any. Or we're in the middle of our public comment period. It began January 5th and will go to the 19th. And kind of note is that's a 14-day comment period. Little random, but our public participation plan lays out that tip amendments are a minimum of a 10-day public comment period. We strive for a 30-day public comment period. Can't always do that, especially for tip amendments, but we've had the opportunity to go ahead and do more than 10 days. So we took it. So here we are today on the 14th, and we're going to go through details of this and then hopefully get a recommendation to the MPO Policy Committee, which meets next week. There'll be a public hearing at 7 p.m., discussion afterwards, and hopefully be done. So any questions on that process? Good. So DOT has established these revision procedures in collaboration with the regional planning commissions and the MPOs and other partners. And the highlighted ones are what are relevant today. So any change that triggers an air quality conformity determination, adding or removing a project or a phase of a project, making a change in the scope, or a 25% increase or decrease in the total cost of the project within the tip year. So those are what are impact resulting in today's tip amendment. And I just want to point out that William Rose from DOT has joined us virtually. So welcome, William. Thanks for coming. So any questions on these thresholds? So here are the projects. This is Amherst Project 44351. That's on Amherst Street, also 22. This is a scope only change, and this is one of those ones I highlighted what the change is. It's literally a space, I think, in the project description. And what happens is, probably the project manager went in there and just kind of cleaned up things and eliminated that space. So, but what happens with the DOT database, it spits out this as an amendment. So there's really no change to the scope except for a space there, as far as I can tell. Yeah, Will.
Yeah, I have one question. What is a multimodal facility? What does that mean? Is that a what?
It's a side path.
Oh, it's
That's your side path.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wonder why they didn't call or
It's looking a little fancier.
Yeah.
It just means
Okay.
bike and pedestrian and that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
That's the question.
Yeah, Ben.
I think we've had one or two of this type of like thing before. Is there any way that we can simplify or automate the process on our end for the like scrivener's errors type items where there's not a meaningful change? Rather than going through them if it's not meaningful, like.
Well, we can bring that up with DOT, that. It's a good question. I don't have an answer, but we can certainly try to do that. It would. Yeah, it's one of those things where it spits it out as an amendment and we just go for it.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm not sure if it's the kind of thing where we can make a motion for staff to be able to just kind of sign off on them regardless or something, but just putting the idea out there.
Okay. So project 40662, this is in Brookline on Route 13. It's the left-hand turn lane on southbound 13 onto Old Milford Road, or possibly a turn lane. The proposed changes are the construction phase is being removed. The estimate for the project is going from about 1.2 million to around 500,000, which is a 58% change. And the reason for the change is, you're going to recall, this is to accommodate the draft 10-year plan. This is one of those projects that were designated to go to just engineering and right of way, and that would be it. And in the future, if there's construction funding, this could come back. So analysis, removing a phase of a project requires an amendment, and then significantly changing the cost within the TIP also results in an amendment. So that's the reason for this one. Nashua Project 10136A, this is on Route 101A between Salina Avenue and Somerset. This is, all of pedestrian, bike, transit, and capacity improvements. So the changes are that the right-of-way phase is being removed from 2028, and according to the draft 10-year plans being bumped to 2030 to 2032. We're adding the preliminary engineering phase to FY 2026. Funding estimate is decreasing by almost 99% because of the construction phase coming out. And again, this is to accommodate changes in the draft 10-year plan. So adding a phase, we're removing a phase, and we're changing the cost within the 4 TIP years by more than 25%. Are there any questions on that? Yeah. Okay.
So I guess this is a question probably for William, but given that the draft 10-year plan hasn't been approved by the legislature, and presumably there's a potential for projects to change, why are we adopting TIP amendments in response to the draft 10-year plan at this point?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. We are managing the 10-year plan in real time. So as this has been, the draft has been approved by Gassett and is moving on to the governor, we're going to mirror those changes in our planning documents, including the STIP. And if and when either the governor or legislature makes changes to reinstate or change these projects again, we'll deal with those again through the STIP process.
Thank you.
All right. Also in Nashua, project 16314 is on East Hollis Street and intersections improvements along the street. So the change is that the project estimate, which is especially the construction phase, is increasing from about 3.2 million to about 4.3 million, significant change. As I understand it, the reason for the change is that the construction estimate has been updated and increased that much. And, so the change is, again, greater than 25%, requires a TIP amendment. And I would add that the one public comment that we've received so far is from DOT, and they're adding $40,000 of PPP funding. That was not in the original docket for this, so that's being added in. So the change is about 39%. So any questions on that one? Okay. I think this is the last local project, and this is from on 101 from Wilton, Milford, Amherst, and East Bedford. These are safety improvements identified in that study we were part of back in 2022. This project was being removed again to accommodate the draft 10-year plan. And in that draft, preliminary engineering is moving to 2030 and 31, right away in 2030, 31, and construction in 2034. And so removing a project requires a TIP amendment.
I guess,
Yeah, well,
so this is sort of kicking the can down the road, right? I mean, is that what is happening?
Yes.
I mean, and that's an important, section of 101. There's been a lot of accidents, previously. This just delays it now until at least, 2034. I mean, that's 9 years.
yeah, I mean, hopefully we can come up with some funding to move that along.
I mean, is anybody concerned about that? Is DOT concerned about it, or I'm just, that's, a pretty, I'll just keep quiet.
But I mean, I don't,
Huh?
So you don't need to keep quiet. And
How,
there's also,
how can you change that? I guess it has to be recommended in the next 10-year plan to bring it forward, because
well, to my comment earlier, the 10-year plan is still in draft form.
right.
So there is still the opportunity for the governor to change it. There's still the opportunity for the legislature to change it. So I would say, one, we're still in the public comment period. So public comments, including from yourself, can be made. They'll become a part of the official record. And yeah, the legislature could change this. So I think that's probably going to be the next path, is if people are really concerned, it is important to reach out to your representatives, if this is something we want to see change, and to voice that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
yeah, thanks, Jay. So moving on to kind of statewide programmatic changes, this project is being added. It's the technology transfer station at UNH. So this project is being added to the statewide TIP. So, and the reason is that we call this T squared. We work with them a lot on various things like technology for road surface management system projects, for example, and other technical assistance that they provide. But anyway, this is a child project of the statewide local technical assistance program, or LTAP. That's the parent program. And the T2 project is kind of being created as a standalone project because it's not only using that LTAP funding anymore. It's using some additional funding, some state planning and research funding, toll credits, and because now it's using not just that one source, it needs to be a standalone project. So that's the explanation there. And again, adding a project requires an amendment. Yeah, Ben.
So just from my understanding, is this, because I thought T-Squared was, it's an ongoing program that needs continuous funding. So is this like being put on with the intention that this will just be a ongoing funding stream, or is this for like a specific defined project within T-Squared?
No, this is, as I understand it, this just supports T-Squared, not a specific project.
Okay, I didn't realize we could fund like other non kind of like or project oriented towards construction or something. Okay.
Probably not. I don't know about construction, actual infrastructure. This is more technical support.
Like, my understanding is that mostly these are meant to be engineering, design, and then construction of like actual roadway improvements. I didn't realize that it could be used to fund more, not like something that wasn't kind of with that end goal in mind of construction.
Yeah, some programmatics are, construction guardrails or community maintenance, that kind of thing. This happens to be technical.
Right.
That makes sense. All right, this is overhead sign replacement, and this is another one of Ben's favorite things here, where it's just the crew scope misspells rehabilitation, so I guess the project manager went in there and corrected that. And then I think this could be the last project, and this is the Recreational Trails Fund Act. And the change is to increase funding within the statewide TIP years from about 6 million to about 8.3 million. And the reason it's being increased is that previous funds in previous years that didn't get spent, or they were unobligated, they are at risk for going away. And so DOT is going ahead and they're adding this funding into the TIP to ensure that they don't get taken away. And that increase is greater than 25%. So we need an amendment. Yeah, Tyrell.
So then how would those funds get used practically? And then is there a time limit for when that extra money has to be spent?
I don't know that there is a time limit, but there is a risk of losing the funding if you don't obligate it. It's the actual task. And William could correct me on that if he has a different explanation. And what was the other part of that, Tyrell?
It was, how does this money, Recreational Trail Funds Act, how does that get used?
William, do you have an answer to that?
Sure. This is money that gets taken off the top of our TAP program. The federal allocation, a portion of that is set aside to the states to run rec trails programs. In this case, it's Department of Natural and Cultural Resources Trails Bureau that administers a grant program using these dollars. In prior years, there may have been expectations regarding how much a project would cost. And so those funds were set aside for those projects. Let's say you think it's going to cost $1 million, but it comes in at 950,000. That extra 50,000 sits there, and there is a time limit on how long from the time that the funds are released to when they need to be obligated. And what you're seeing here is Department of Natural and Cultural Resources working with our Bureau of Finance has identified a specific amount of money from non-STIP prior years that did not get obligated. And they're just moving those funds into the current STIP years to allow for those funds to be allocated towards eligible projects through that grant program run by DNCR.
So if somebody was interested in, trails project, they could go to Natural Cultural Resources and try to get a grant application in.
Yes, DNCR does a decent job of advertising when the grant application rounds open and how much are available. I don't know off the top of my head what those timelines are, but we can certainly get some information to you offline about that.
Thank you, Wally.
I have a process related question.
Eric, I think Eric had his hand up first.
Oh, just to follow up to Tyrell's question. William, do you know what the name of that grant program is? Is this RTP or is this something different?
I believe it's Rec Trails program, but I will clarify that. And again, I'll get some information to staff offline.
Okay, thank you.
Wayne, you had a question.
The process related question. We went through a process over the last several years, I'd say, where going through the dead horse, but we worked hard to get the
Sure didn't beat it.
the exit 5 off ramp project coming off of the Everett Turnpike, going on to the West Hollis Street, connecting over the turnpike, where there's that extremely short weave section where we constantly have accidents, and the fire department and the police department are constantly summoned to go to the usual spot when they get a phone call. We went through the proper procedures here from a grassroots perspective as far as bringing it up through Nashua technical staff, through the Regional Planning Commission. It was a top priority in the region. Doing well. And then through the process, because I guess the project never really had a political champion, if you would be, a senator or a representative, somebody up in Concord. It got removed by staff. Now, I'm not second guessing the fact that staff has to make decisions as far as process is concerned, but as a process related question, if a legislator or executive counselor or senator were to challenge that decision and want to put that Exit 5 project back into the project, is the process still open for that to be able to happen? Is that what I'm hearing? The hearing process is still open?
The hearing, well, the GASI process is over, but the draft 10-year plan is not adopted. If you're saying, if the governor is going to urge homework on it, and then it goes to the state legislature where it gets debated further.
I'm not sure I understand that either.
Okay.
The 10-year plan has not been adopted yet. So what we have, moving that project is recommended in the draft that came through GASA, but it still has to go through the governor. It has to be recommended to the legislature by the governor, and then the legislature has to vote on it. So there's still a political process ahead of us, and there's still an opportunity to advocate for that project.
So if the governor and legislature were to agree that that was a priority situation and it ought to still be in the 10-year plan, then conceivably they could make that happen.
Yes.
Thank you, Ben.
For this item, we were just discussing for the trail funds. So my understanding is we're essentially adding money to not lose other funds coming in. Is this the minimum amount we need to put forward to keep a hold of those funds, or is this kind of all the money that was kind of floating in the pot from prior years?
William would know better, but I'm guessing that it's just the funding that they were afraid would lapse, and it's moved it here so it won't lapse. And I imagine it's all that funding that has been left over.
Right. So it's funding that wasn't obligated that hadn't lapsed yet. So they're moving it forward so that it can be spent.
Yeah, so I was just thinking, because if we're making pretty severe and drastic cuts to other projects or cutting them entirely, the thought process being, if this is just the bare minimum to keep a hold of the money, that's great, as opposed to cutting another project and putting more than is minimum required into this one, if that makes sense. I was just curious, like how that number was calculated, essentially.
I'll defer that to William, but of course these are top funds, so we couldn't use them for Exit 5.
Yeah, so we would not be able to use this extra funding for one of these other projects we're cutting.
Right.
Okay.
But I'll let William confirm that.
Confirmed. These are funds that has been specifically set aside for the Rec Trails program and are not eligible to use for other program costs and are not detracting from other funds or funding sources or projects.
That makes more sense.
Good question. Thank you, Ben. So those are all projects, and so our recommendation is, so we, so the amendment meets all of our air quality requirements, and that the specifics of that are laid out in the actual draft tip document, which is on our webpage. There's a link up there. There was a link in your packet and in the mailing, the email. So, what we're after is so action is required by by this group to recommend approval of the proposed amendment to the NPO Policy Committee. And for your awareness, we have worked, NRPC staff has reviewed the amendment. It's been in consultation with our federal and state partners, including DOT, DES, EPA, Federal Highways, Federal Transit, the other New Hampshire MPOs. And through that process of consulting, we're comfortable with this, and we recommend approving the amendment. So I'm going to go ahead and propose this motion that the NRPC TTAC recommends adoption by the National Planning Organization. I should say, I guess, yeah, and it is NPO, of Amendment 3 to the FY 2025-28 NRPC Transportation Improvement Program as discussed. So,
I'll make the motion.
okay, great.
One second.
Okay, excellent. Any discussion?
I have a question. What happens if the TTAC doesn't adopt the map?
So this is a TTAC's vote is a recommendation.
Uh-huh.
So TTAC were not to recommend. It would go to the MPO Policy Committee next week, the full commission meeting, with either a negative recommendation or no recommendation. And then the MPO would have to make a decision as to whether or not they want to support the amendment or not. Obviously, a recommendation from TTAC will be weighty when it comes to a full commission vote.
All right, so we do have William from DOT is on Zoom, so we need to do a roll call. DOT is a voting member, so we'll go around the room. So we're gonna vote for this amendment. So Camille.
Maria, yes.
No.
Jen.
Yes.
Kyle.
Yes.
Ben.
Staying.
Abstain.
Mark.
I put the motion out there.
Oh, of course. Thank you. So
You still have to vote, so you could make a motion and vote in the negative.
Yes.
Yes. Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't believe I'm a voting
Okay,
member.
great. Carol.
Yes.
That's
And Jay.
Whatever he said.
Yes.
And William.
DOT is a yes.
Thank you. I believe the motion carries. Thank you very much. And really appreciate that. So moving on from this, also in your packet is a memo about the January 5th minor revisions. Similar to amendments, there are thresholds, and thresholds are basically below what they are for amendments. So I would point out that minor revisions are administrative in nature. They don't require any action by the TTAC or the NPO Policy Committee. This is just information for you. And there's one change in the region, and this is project 13761. It's the widening of the turnpike. This project is the project that is the engineering and right-of-way funding. It's not doesn't have a construction phase, but so what's going on is the PE phase is increasing in 2028. The right-of-way phase is increasing in 2028. The total increase is about 23%. So very minor, it's a minor revision. It's an inflation adjustment. And again, it's less than 25% of the total cost within the 4 tip years. Therefore, it's just a minor revision. And this is for your information, but if you have any questions, I'll answer that. All right. And I did want to, so there aren't any statewide or programmatic changes that impact our region. There is a coastal programmatic, if, it doesn't impact our region, so I don't have it in here. And then I did want to, we talked a little bit about it, just since the last time we met, the GASIT process has been completed, and you're going to remember there are projects. So the proposals in that draft were, some projects were delayed and just PE and right of way. So that hasn't changed. That's the Brookline project, the intersection at 113 and Old Milford Road, the 101A project that we just talked about, that also was proposed, just go to PE and right of way, not construction. So that's where it ended up at the conclusion of GASIT. These were the projects that originally were out, and one project came back in, and that's a project in Brookline at the intersection of Route 13 and Route Nala. It's an intersection improvement, so that was added back in the GASIT process. These other projects, including the one Wayne mentioned earlier, are still out. And then these are the projects, again, you remember from our solicitation process last year to identify our regional priorities, our top priorities, which made it into the initial draft. Were the Lead Street improvement to Nashua, the Wilton turning lanes at the recycling center, and the Brookline intersection of Meeting House Road and 13. Those were our priorities. They were in, and then they got removed at the beginning of the GASIT process. And the regional project that ended up getting added in at the end was Hudson project, which is the Belknap Road extension to Route 3A. That was well down our list of priorities. And at the October GASIT hearing, Hudson advocated for the project, and that was heard by our executive counselor, as I understand it, and this got added back in. So that's what that's about. And so
they took a project from one town and gave it to another town? Is that what that discussion was?
Well,
Or yeah, would you mind going back to?
Right.
Yeah, so they took it from Nashua, Wilton to Brookline, and then they reprioritized it to Hudson.
I guess you could say that. And it wasn't DOT that did that part. This was the GASIT process, which is DOT facilitates, but they don't have the control of what this final decision is.
What is GASIT again?
Governor's Advisory Committee on Intermodal Travel.
So it's the executive council and the commissioner of DOT, and who put it back in was our executive counselor Wheeler.
So I'm not surprised because traffic is like the number 1 concern of the town of Hudson, and has been for some time. They have their traffic issues, and they're likely to show up in force at a meeting of like GASIT to make sure that their voices are heard. That's why I was referring to earlier, you have a project, if you have a champion, somebody who's politically connected that can get the attention of an executive counselor like Wheeler, you can get your project into the 10-year plan pretty easily. I mean, in my opinion.
And the hearing was in Hudson, so that's
I made it easy.
Yeah. And I will note that the big concern, at least amongst residents, there was that intersection is a death trap. It is currently a kind of a relic of poor decisions from many decades ago. And that was the reason there was such a big push amongst the community, because it got identified several years ago from highway safety as an issue.
They do have traffic.
Oh, yeah, we do.
number 1 issue in Hudson always.
So we talked a little bit about this, but next steps are The draft 10-year plan has been submitted to the governor. So from now and through June, the governor reviews, submits her projects. She might change it, who knows? To the legislature, there are public hearings, and then the legislature adopts, and then the governor signs it theoretically at the end of June. And then kind of PS, once that next 10-year plan is adopted, a little while later, probably in November, DOT will provide the planning commissions with the TIP projects. Basically, the first 4 years of that 10-year plan will be our next TIP, and then this time next year we'll be adopting the next TIP, the 2030 through 2027 through 2030 TIP. So, all right, hopefully that makes sense. Any questions about all of those projects and all that? All right, thanks for your attention on that. And so we're going to move on to our next agenda item, which is the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services Grant Programs discussion. And Mac Devier is in person today. She's usually in Zoom land, and we're happy to have you.
Yeah, okay. So again, my name is Mac, I'm the grants coordinator here over at NHDES and down at Hazen Drive in Concord, which is right next to DOT. You guys probably see us when you guys get your license renewed.
Oh. And here's this.
All right. So, the hot topic, I think, around the region right now is funding, of course. And so I like to be the kind of like a beacon of good news for people, because that's what I do. I manage grants for EPS. So we are under mobile sources, under air resources. So it's air, technical services, and mobile sources. So we specifically focus on emissions in terms of vehicles and stuff. And that doesn't necessarily have to be just like a driving vehicle. It can be like an engine or a generator or something like that. So, so we're going to talk about two programs for Granite State Clean Fleets program and our New Hampshire Clean Diesel program. And at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about an RFI that we just brought out for a potential new funding program, which could be really exciting. So, so all in all, we're going to do a quick intro. We're going to talk about GSEF, how much funding we have left over, and talk a little bit about NHCD and then the RFI. So what is Granite State Clean Fleet? So it's a competitive reimbursement program to reduce NOx diesel emissions in the state. It's funded by the New Hampshire Volkswagen Mitigation Trust. I don't know if you guys remembered when Volkswagen cheated on their emissions tests a while ago and they owe the EPA a bunch of money. And so that money went into a trust for each state. It's called the Wilmington Trust. And so they hold that money for us, but it is technically state funding for us. And so it is basically to replace diesel units and replace them with something that burns a lot cleaner, because since they cheated on their emissions tests, they produce a lot of NOx emissions. So our goal is to basically mitigate or offset those emissions by purchasing these new diesel units. So as of right now, we've done a pretty good job of obligating this funding. We've had a couple of rounds of funding. We brought one out in 2023. We brought two out this year. So one was 5 million and the other one is 7 million. So this is our second round that we've brought out and was 7 million, and now we're at 1.5. So we're doing a pretty good job of obligating this funding, and we want to obligate it around March 30th, 2026. If the funding has been obligated beforehand, that's great too. It makes our job even easier. So what we do is we have been assessing these applications on a rolling monthly basis. It used to be that we had like a bunch of time for people to put in their applications, and then they would have to wait till the end of the application cycle to be assessed. And so we figured out, that doesn't give a lot of people a lot of time to finish their project because there are deadlines for this, just like the DOT has their deadlines for their funding as well. So what we do is we give them a monthly deadline and then we assess them on a monthly basis so people have more time to finish their projects. So this is on the 30th of every month, and then we assess them within 5 business days of that 30th of each month. So the information that you would want to look for if you were to apply is our request for proposals, which is basically our how to apply essentially. So it's got full grant timelines because there's expiration dates on this funding, just like any other funding. Eligibility info. So what organizations qualify. Currently, it's only open to public entities. Funding limits and then scoring criteria. So spot the difference. So let's talk about our new changes. So we have a couple of different things compared to the last time. Applicant eligibility is just public entities. The previous round we had for private entities. And so we received some feedback that we should be having it open to public entities as of right now. So we have higher funding percentages based on the project type, lower minimum usage requirements. And we, like I said, are now evaluating it on a rolling monthly basis. This is what people get caught on in the fine print here. So we have a $1 million per entity funding cap for the entire program. So between when we opened up the funding and March 30th, no matter how many times you apply, you're going to have a $1 million funding cap. So you can apply for, let's say, $5 million over the course of multiple projects that you apply for, but your cap is going to be $1 million. And so that allows us to spread the funding out around the states so that we don't have these pockets of funding that has only gone to specific parts of the state. We want to make sure that everybody gets the funding from the state. So projects must be completed by September 30th, 2027 at the latest. And again, that's because we want to make sure that we obligate our funding, or else the funding goes back to Volkswagen. It goes back to the big pot of funding and gets separated to the states that already obligated their funding. So hypothetically, if we obligate all of our funding in time, we might get an extra bonus, some extra funding, but fingers crossed, we want to make sure that we obligate this by a good amount of time. So eligible projects, diesel to diesel, diesel to alternative fuel, that's propane, compressed natural gas, which is CNG, or hybrid. I would say that biodiesel or renewable diesel does not qualify because there's no specific unit that is run on biodiesel or renewable diesel or anything like that. We get a lot of questions about that. They're good alternative fuels, but doesn't qualify. Diesel to electric or hydrogen. And EV infrastructure is included, which is something people don't see or understand in the RFP as much. So I like to add that in there. And then marine shore power installation, which is what this little tool is right here. All right, so example projects. So transit, school, and shuttle buses. Buses are really great projects because it helps to benefit a lot of people in the state. We have to think about, the emissions and the exposure of the people in the state. So buses are actually really great projects. Diesel engines, generally speaking, are great. Drayage, dump and plow trucks, ferry, refuge trucks, forklifts and cargo handling equipment, and airport ground support equipment. Those must be replaced with an EV and freight switcher locomotives. So our usage requirements. So this is hopefully an easier way of looking at it. So our on-road projects must be used of a minimum of 2,500 miles or 500 hours engine use annually. Of course, it depends on the type of unit. Of course, freight switcher locomotives operate a minimum of 1,000 hours per year. ferry and tug is 250 hours a year. All existing units must be fully operational and have at least 1 year of remaining useful life. We're not really replacing emissions or lowering emissions if the unit is not being used, right? Doesn't really make a lot of sense. So we want to make sure that it's operational so that we're actually reducing emissions, because that's the goal. And so this table is a really good table to show, let's say, for instance, if you want to get an on-road unit, let's call it a diesel plow truck or something like that. It's got to be 1992 to 2009 or class 4 through 8, which you can Google. The DOE has a really nice chart on that, and that's just the weight classes per vehicle. So this is a really great guide, and this is on the RFP to show what units qualify. How much can be reimbursed? This is the big question, right? Between 80 and 90% or 95% of eligible project costs, depending on the project type. The gist of it is the higher emissions that you reduce, the more funding you get. So if you do a diesel to diesel, you're only going to get 80%. And I'm saying only in comparison to this, 80% is still a pretty good deal. And then diesel to battery electric grid or hydrogen fuel cell is 95%. So basically the higher emissions you're reducing, the higher amount of funding you're getting. And then we do have reimbursement caps as well. So we have 250,000 for diesel, CNG, and hybrid. And then we have 500,000 for marine shore power, diesel, CNG, and hybrid. And then battery electric grid, hydrogen fuel cell projects are 750,000 per unit. Mostly because those projects are a little bit more expensive. So, and then again, the per applicant cap is 1 million. This is also a quick comparison. So we have, again, 2 projects, and we're going to talk about, or not project, programs, and we're going to talk about the other one in just a second. This shows the differences between the funding percentages between these 2 programs. And so this is why Granite State Clean Fleets is so popular, is because we have a lot more funding reimbursement in Granite State Clean Fleets, but they are slightly different. They're the same in function, but they are slightly different. Granite State Clean Fleets, generally speaking, is on-road units. New Hampshire Clean Diesel, generally speaking, is off-road units. All right, and this is, again, a nice little side-by-side comparison about what qualifies between these 2 programs. All right, so priority New Hampshire communities. So mobile sources, we want to prioritize communities that need economic benefits or help per se. So the priority communities list basically shows what towns are within a specific percentage of the poverty line. So depending on if you're in the ranked 1st through 50th in individuals below the poverty line, you get 10 points. And then priority 2 would be 51st through 100th in individuals below the poverty line. So that is 5 bonus points. So you can see that in our scoring criteria. So not only are the projects assessed on the emissions, but they're also assessed on the region as well, because we want this to benefit. So, steps to apply. Again, read the request for proposals. That is the how to apply. Complete the application. You're only going to complete 1 application. It's either the A1 or A2, and that's just based on your project type. Email the completed application to our MS Grants email. And then if you have any questions, again, drop us a note or anything like that. If you want to look at it right now, we have a QR code for our Granite State Clean Fleets page. All right, so talking about New Hampshire Clean Diesel real quick. Again, available on a rolling monthly basis. This has approximately 315,000 in remaining diesel emissions reduction funding available. So this is EPA funding, so a little bit different. So the function is very simple. You're replacing old diesel units with something newer and cleaner. But this is federal funding. And so just like any other federal funding, we have to obligate this funding by a certain period of time. This is currently open to public entities only, non-road diesel units, engines, or equipment in idling. Reduction pedestals do qualify. What I would do is subscribe to our e-news if you have any, are interested in any public incentives, anything else as well, or if there's any updates on New Hampshire Clean Diesel funding. Typically, the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act funding comes up every year, but we have not received the funding for 2026 yet. However, don't know whether or not that will happen or not, but this tends to happen every year. We essentially wait for this funding to come up every year. We just have not received this funding yet. So we're waiting on that. But as of right now, this is funding that has accumulated over past a few years. So we want to make sure that we obligate it by a specific amount of time. All right, so last thing here. Within the Volkswagen Trust, I know we had talked about Granite State Clean Fleets a little bit, which is under the Volkswagen Mitigation Trust. Within the Volkswagen Trust, we are required to spend the big pot of funding. It's a little under $32 million that they gave us essentially. And so within that, certain percentages have to go to certain things. So some of it is towards, again, reducing emissions by replacing diesel units. And then some of it is EV charging stations, level 2. So as of right now, DES has $3 million that we have not used towards a program for level 2 charging. And so what we want right now is for public input on how, if we would have a level 2 charging station program, rebate program, how would you think DES should go about running a program? So we just want feedback from people on this for a hypothetical $3 million level 2 charging station program. Just a reminder, level 2 charging has a little bit of different benefits than fast charging stations. Fast charging stations are like going to a gas station. It takes like 15 minutes to charge, right? Level 2 charging stations, it's a little bit slower, but it has some economic benefits. Since it's a little bit slower, it's really great at like outlets or ski resorts or like coffee shops or something like that. It makes people walk around, buy a few things. So there's a little bit of economic benefits for level 2 charging stations in town and such. So we haven't received a ton of public comment on this. I'm going to be very honest. So if anybody would like to give us your 2 cents about level 2 charging station funding, feel free to email us at msgrants@des.nh.gov. You can access this flyer here, and then you can read the RFI right here. Anybody have any questions? I know that was a lot. Kind of stuff a lot of information all at once. What was your name?
Eric.
Eric.
Thank you, Mac. Great presentation. Just one question for the Granite State Clean Fleet Program. Are off-road, vehicles, I'm thinking of construction equipment, those kinds of things.
It depends on the type of vehicle.
It's like, no. Okay.
Construction equipment does not, but airport ground support and cargo equipment do qualify, but I believe that has to be replaced with EVs. I can look at our RFP to confirm, because I know there's like a couple of exceptions. I think generally speaking, no, but I definitely can double check for you.
Okay. Yeah, the example I was thinking of was we have a loader, that we use. I actually was looking at one of the previous slides mentioned forklifts or cargo hauling equipment.
Yeah, I can double check on that. If it doesn't, depending on the usage, it would probably qualify for New Hampshire Clean Diesel. And if you replace that with an EV, the funding percentages would be a lot higher. So if you did diesel, it would be 25. But if you did a EV would be 45%. We had pretty good success with loaders that are replaced with EVs. We've also done diesel loaders, and that's totally fine. But recently we've had really good success with EV loaders, so they don't really drive very far, you know?
No.
So, do you have a question in the back too?
I did,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
I have a bunch of very specific questions to my town. Is there somebody in your office that I could reach out to through email or?
Yeah, so you can email this MS Grants email here. And so that's a shared inbox, so it's,
I can't read that.
that's okay. It's basically me and Jack Wade are our mobile sources supervisor. So you can contact me that way, and yeah, as many questions as you want, essentially. Our job is to make sure that we expend this funding, and if people don't understand the process, then we can't expend this funding, right? So we are open to any questions that you guys have.
Could you go to that grant where there was level 1 and level 2 points, or the slide where you got points for the towns? Yeah, that.
Yes, okay. Priority New Hampshire communities.
No,
None of our towns.
right, I was just gonna say, is any NRPC footprint towns in there?
No.
So we don't get those points?
No.
So that's the other question. I mean, has any town submitted a grant to these DES for this stuff?
I know Mount Vernon did.
Litchfield has.
Litchfield?
Bennington has as well.
We did one several years ago.
If you go to the New Hampshire Volkswagen Mitigation Trust website, just recently we posted a document with all of the, I think, approved Volkswagen Mitigation Trust projects. It's at the bottom of the page. There's like 2 tabs. It's on the second tab there. So it will tell you the type of project and where it came from. So that is a good resource for people who are thinking on applying. I get a lot of questions from people about it. We can tell you about projects that have been approved, but we can't tell you about projects that are like applying or anything like that, right? Because it's not official. So yeah, so that is a good resource for you. It's different than the Granite State Clean Fleets page. There's a Volkswagen Mitigation Trust page and the Granite State Clean Fleets page. It's on the Volkswagen page, and you can just Google New Hampshire Volkswagen Mitigation. It's not right up. So I would also say the scoring criteria in the RFP is a really great one to look at. People always ask us, oh, well, how is this assessed, or how should we answer our questions in the application? And we tell you that in the scoring criteria where the points go to. So if you're thinking, I don't know what to highlight, it will tell you what you get points for. So
is it fair to say that if you're not on the list of these communities, you shouldn't be discouraged from applying?
I wouldn't say so, no. There's some units that there's a couple of different things that we look at. I wish I had my scoring criteria up there, but that's okay. There's the bulk of the points go towards emissions. So this is kind of like a bonus if, for instance, like the emission reductions is a little bit lower, but we want to make sure that it benefits, communities in need, right? So it gives those communities in need a little bit of a leg up. In terms of I'm trying to think of what else, there's like additional benefits section in there. So again, not only are they assessed on emissions, but there's other benefits like environmental factors and stuff like that we look at, generally speaking, if that makes sense. So let's say you're trying to reduce salt production for plow trucks or whatever, and you get a new plow truck and it reduces that somehow, we look at stuff like that too, So we try to look at it holistically, but the points are weighted specific ways, Any question?
So this seems like it's a future project, so it's not really taking care of any damage that was done. So would any of this be eligible, say if somebody needed transportation to get to a medical facility, say in a wheelchair, or any type of medical ride? Because that would actually be something that may have been caused by the Volkswagen problem?
So, let me think here. It is specifically to reduce diesel emissions for units, if that makes sense. So for instance, if you wanted to, it's like public transit is a little weird. If the public transit entity is owned by a municipality or a state entity, then that would qualify. If they wanted to, let's say, replace a bus or something like that, or something that's new, that would qualify. But if it's, for instance, I'm trying to think of like a private nonprofit, so like Concord Coach, I don't believe is owned by the state. Concord Coach would not qualify, even though it's technically like public transit. Does that make sense?
Right, but that's not really what I'm asking. So what I'm really asking is in the past, so if if the emissions had affected people individually and they therefore needed some transportation to healthcare facilities, could any of that revenue potentially be used for that?
I don't think so, but I would have to check and see. Typically, I think the design is, so basically what they designed this after New Hampshire Clean Diesel, so the DERA funding, to make it easier because the process was already set in place. So they're like, okay, let's offset these emissions by replacing these units. So I think it's unit specific, and we have the EV charging station funding and some admin funding, but I'd have to check and see. I can ask Jack and take a look at it and see if there's something like that and kind of go from there. So yeah, I can definitely double check.
Because there is a big need
Yeah.
statewide for transportation for medical purposes.
Yeah.
And so anything that could be used to help that, and it may be that some of people's problems were caused by emissions.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, let me double check and see. It might not be the case, but you never know. The document's pretty big, so I always like to double check and see. Does anybody else have any questions?
So for the EV money, are you looking to limit that to public entities, or would you anticipate that being open to nonprofits or private entities?
Quite there yet, honestly. We're currently we're thinking about different avenues, but we haven't really committed to any. And so that's kind of the whole point of the public comment period, is we want to see what's best based on what people say, right? So we do encourage people to give us any sort of information on what you think would work best for your community. We are considering relying on a third party to manage these funds because we already have a couple of programs that we're managing as of right now. So that could be, a private entity, that could be like a public entity. So we're open to public comment, but we haven't committed on anything as of right now. The 3 million is essentially, and the level 2 is essentially the what is required for Volkswagen on how we expend this funding. So, question.
Yeah, so when it's saying like supporting light duty electric vehicles, that is specific to just charging infrastructure, and that wouldn't be light duty vehicles, for example, that are transitioning to EVs or hybrids.
Yeah, so our vehicle funding is Granite State Clean Fleets essentially, and our charging funding is this $3 million here.
Okay, so it's like two separate pots of money.
Yeah, exactly. It's under the Volkswagen mitigation, so it's $3.1 million. And they say, okay, within this big pot of money, you have to do a specific percentage towards vehicle charging, and you have a specific percentage towards diesel emission reductions by replacing units. So it's the same pot of funding, but it's just kind of split out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Question?
For the vehicle you're replacing, what happens to that vehicle? Do you have to salvage it, or do you guys take possession of it? Can you sell it?
You have to cut a 3-inch hole in the engine block and then cut the chassis rails on both sides. So whatever you do afterwards, we don't care. So if you make money off of the parts for it, so some people sell it for scrap at a yard, or let's say you've got really nice wheels on your on like a plow truck or something like that you really want to keep, you can use that for a different plow truck. We don't care, as long as that unit is inoperable, essentially, because we want to make sure it doesn't produce any emissions, right?
No, that makes sense. And then a follow-up, after the new vehicle's delivered, what's the reporting on that, or once it's delivered, it's in our possession, it's cool?
Yeah, so we require quarterly reporting for all of our grants as of right now. So basically, and it's not super, technical. We basically want to know how many miles you've driven it or how many hours, depending on the type of unit, of course, and idling and all that, because we want to keep track of, like, generally speaking, the emissions for that unit. So let's say you haven't received your new unit yet and you're driving your old unit yet and you haven't scrapped it, that's totally okay. Once you scrap that old unit, you would report that the emissions or the usage would be 0 because you haven't used it within the quarter. And then with your new unit, you would just tell us what you would use it for the next quarter once you buy your new unit. So
For the life of the vehicle?
we do it for have to check and see how many we do, honestly, but there's a specific amount of quarterly reports and there's a specific amount of annual reports. But it's not for, like, the life of the vehicle, it's only like a few years, I believe.
Right.
After.
Thank you.
It just keeps us, in the know.
Yep,
So,
that works.
anybody else? Sweet, awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. All right.
And we can distribute these slides out to everyone.
So we did have agenda item 5. We wanted to take a few minutes. Emma and Ryan, we're going to tag team just a little presentation about a tip management software program that we now have. We collaborate with other MPOs because when we get that 10-year plan database, large spreadsheet from DOT, it's really tough to incorporate that into the tip manually. It's just been a nightmare for many years. And so we're correcting that. We retained the other MPOs in state retained a company that does this kind of software. So it's really going to be helpful. And Emma and Ryan are just going to talk about it for a few minutes. And there is a public facing part of it, which is going to interest you. So
Will this be demoed next week at the NPO or the commissioners meeting?
Wasn't planning that.
I'm just curious.
Can certainly talk about it.
Okay, so as Matt kind of started to mention, this is going to help us on 2 fronts. One is behind the scenes for the planning crew here, just kind of keeping MPO to 10-year plan projects in line and tracking the history of them. And then for the public, there's a viewer side that will help our member communities and boards maybe answer questions on their own about projects that they in the past might have called Matt for. But hopefully this website is a shortcut to helping you find out where your project is and what's in the plan region-wide. So for now, we have soft launched this on our website in one place, and that's this MPO project tracker button here. It's replacing our in-house GIS version of the project tracker, which we had before, which was cumbersome to maintain all that data that Matt just mentioned that we get from DOT. We were putting that into GIS ourselves. So every time a penny change in our project, it was kind of up to us to put that in our GIS and have it reflected online in order to show what's kind of the most recent picture of the MPO projects. This way we get that table from DOT, the software developer that created this system helped us match up all the fields in that DOT data to what you're about to see. So it's kind of a seamless transition. And then there's a mapping component as well, which is really nice. So if you click on the MPO project tracker button from our homepage, you come to this kind of splash screen for our MPO projects. There's a little description about what the tip is and a nice little map of our current urbanized area and MPO planning area. So what you're going to be interested in, and again, this is the public facing portion of the site, is up here. There's going to be a couple ways to view the projects. One is in table or list form, so that's this projects button here. So these are all the projects in our current 2025 to 28 tip. It's already filtered by our region, so this RPC filter up here is kind of irrelevant. You can see all the projects here. You can sort by town, and you'll see some of them are multi-town, and so you're going to kind of, some of them might be lost if you're looking for a national project. It's hidden here, but you can also filter by town. So I'm assuming that's something most of you are going to want to do, is look for your own town. This is a statewide list, so sometimes it's easier just to do that. And yeah, it has been broken before, and it looks like it's broken again. So let's try that again. There it goes. So sometimes it takes a second click to wake it up, but there's the two Milford projects. You can sort also or filter. Clear this out. You can do by project type. So they've divided it up into active transportation, which is going to be our bike and ped projects, and roadway, which is the more vehicular based stuff, bridges and highway expansion and new stuff like that. So that's kind of how you see a list of the projects. To get more information on a specific project in this tabular view, you can just click on any row. So for instance, let's try this first Amherst one. So you get a nice little thumbnail map of where the project is, a brief description and cost across all the years of the current plan. And then down here, you have some various options. So under overview, they split it up by phase. So you can see all the planning and engineering dollars committed, the right of way, the construction, and then the totals are down here in bold. You can see it by year. So by year and by phase, if you go across and down. And then these other tabs here down at the bottom take you to fund history, which we have. So you can see how it's changed or remained the same across all the revisions and amendments if they have been changed in this particular project. And then as it stands in the final tip right now, sits at the bottom. Revision history is kind of similar, but instead of showing you the details of the funding, it's just going to show you when and why this particular project was changed at any point during the process, any amendment or any minor revision. You can download a PDF, which will include all three of these tabs. So it'll have the map, the brief description, and then it will give you the table from each three of these tabs all in one PDF. And then you can hit the share button and send the link to all the data to a local board member or anyone else that might be requesting, hey, what's going on with this particular project? So that's under the projects tab, this kind of tabular view of all the projects. Then there's an interactive map. So this is where having that GIS data that I talked about before actually came in handy because we're using the lines and points for all these projects that we had been maintaining all along and feeding it into this new software. And they get joined up with the tabular data. So it shows you kind of a mapped version of all the projects. You'll notice there's only 37 here, and I think they were 60 or 70 something before. So this tab is only showing the projects that are mappable. So things that have a geographic component. So all those statewide programmatics, general funding buckets, those aren't going to be on here. So be careful if you're looking at this tab, you're not seeing every project in our region in the tip. You're only seeing the ones that kind of have that spatial component to them. But similar things you can do on this page as the other one. You can filter by project type. So there's the same three buckets of categories up there. You can filter by type, funding source, and year. And then there's a whole list here. But the cool thing about it is as you pan and zoom around the map, the list changes over here to only show you what's visible on the map. So if you know where your project is, but you kind of don't want to search for it, you can always just zoom right to it. There's the Pelham one. And as you get closer, it's only going to show you the one Pelham one that you're looking at. You can, again, click over here on the table to get the same information before, but the map itself is also interactive. So you can click on point. You get a few summary things. And then if you click view details, it brings up a pop-up that looks just like the other one from the other tab. So those are the two ways to look at data, what's in the current tip right now. It will get updated every time DOT sends a new table. So new amendments, new revisions trigger all these things changing. So the history will change every time that happens, and then the current will reflect the new current. One other thing I wanted to show, you can click the other tab up here that I haven't done yet is plan revisions. This is a little more in the weeds, but you can go back to any of these that we have loaded in since we started using the software and look at projects that were revised / amended, or if you're looking at a final version, you can look at all the projects that were in that final version of that plan. So that's pretty cool too. So that's a good way of seeing, oh yeah, what happened, for us internally and for you at the town level. When did that project come online, or what happened in that year? Why did that change? This is where you probably want to go. So the one other thing I wanted to point out here on the public facing end is up here where it says we're now looking at the 25 to 28 tip. There is a choose button. So when you hit that button, it, in theory, eventually is going to let you do the same thing, but for every project in the 10-year plan or every project in our long-range plan, each of which is going to include all the projects from kind of the next step up, rolled up into the bigger summary. We have not populated these two non-tip plans yet. Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but the catch there is DOT doesn't send the big tables in Excel for these other plans that they do for the tip. So in essence, to make this work on this platform, we have to build our own giant spreadsheets, which break up every project in the 10-year plan and every project in the long-range MTP in the same funding buckets and the same money and everything, and it's a bear. So we are hoping to get there. And when we do, you'll be able to switch back and forth between all the plans, and all the data will change to include even more projects. Any questions on what you guys will see as you visit this website?
And this is online now. This is accessible.
It is. So again, from our homepage, the only place we put it right now, I believe, is in this on this button in the green row here. Eventually, I think we're going to have it, show up on our transportation main menu here, because that's probably where the first place people will look.
So where do you go for it down?
Right here, this third button in the green.
Oh, got it. Okay.
It's called NPO Project Tracker. We should probably, that's kind of how we consider it internally, but to the public, it's more of a project viewer or a tip viewer.
Yeah.
So we might be renaming that, but in any case, it'll be there and in other places and searchable all over our website.
I have a question, Ryan.
Yes, sir.
What's going to happen to projects as either they get completed or if they get taken out of the tip or the 10-year plan or something?
Yeah, so aside from that thing I just showed you of being able to go back and see past histories, I believe, even if a project is no longer in the latest spreadsheet that we get from DOT, it'll stay in the list of projects from, if we're doing this 10 years from now, you'll be able to come back to the 2025 to 28 tip and still see all the projects and all the funding that were in that tip. In the reporting, which Emma's about to show, there's an option for showing projects that have been taken out, I think, or a reason why, like in the revision version of the report, it'll say removed from list, basically. So I think if we can show that, we will, but it's a little tricky. Any other questions on that?
Yeah, so if something is moved from the tip to the 10-year plan, is that automatic?
If it's in the 10,
if it's in the tip.
Yeah, but it gets,
and it's removed.
Moved out to the outer 6 years,
Yes,
basically.
yeah.
So you wouldn't be able to see that. Well, you'd be able to, if we do it right, you'll be able to see that it was removed because it'll show up in a revision or an amendment as removed. And then in the future, when we start populating all the plan types, that project, as long as it stays in the 10-year plan, if it's 7 years from now instead of 3, it'll be in that 10-year plan with the same amount of details, just programmed differently based on what happened to it in the planning process.
Yeah, and when do you think you'll have that populated for the 10-year and the?
About 10 years.
Yeah.
That's why they call it the 10-year plan.
You only have the tip stuff in there now.
Yeah,
correct.
When do you think you'll have the? Like the summer?
TBD.
Yeah.
Oh, TBD, okay.
Yep. maybe.
And you, in the meantime, you can go on DOT's website and find the 10-year plan. It's down here.
You want to sit here?
Yes. Okay, so I'll show you a little bit about the back end. So this is not publicly visible, but this is where we go to upload projects and make edits and pull reports and things. And you can see here that we have 79 projects that the edits have been accepted. You can see some have been removed from the tip. They've been pushed out to outer years. So there's a way to recognize that in the back end. You can also see where I have the draft changes for Amendment 3. They're not visible to the public yet, but I've uploaded them here so we can look for any issues and start thinking about those in the system. And I'll pull up a project that's had a number of changes to it. 16145. So this is a bridge project in Pelham. So we can see here on this page, it gives us all the details from starting in 2011. This project was sort of first came on the radar in 2011, funding wise. So it keeps all the history in here. It highlights in yellow things that have been updated or changed, I think, in the last revision. And then it's really nice how it describes, you know, changes that have occurred and funding types and lots of details. You can also see that this project has been revised many times, most of them during minor revisions, but they keep adjusting it. You know, they've increased the funding, they've decreased the funding. So things keep getting tweaked. So it's really helpful to have this all in one place and to be able to pull it up by project. It really helps us understand what's going on. And then we have lots of options for reports on the back end, which is really nice. We can pull a project overview report, which we can include removed projects. So there's different ways to see that. I pulled this report earlier, so we didn't have to generate it again. This is that same Pelham project. Some of the projects will pull up maps on this page. This one doesn't happen to, but you can see the funding in the current tip years, in the prior tip years, or in a prior tip, and then anything going out past current tip years. Right now, construction, you know, is scheduled out through fiscal year 2028, and then it also goes and describes these funding changes. So it's a really nice way to get you know, sort of the big picture of what's going on and lots of details of what's going on with these projects. And because we have all this in a database, we can really pull a lot of different types of reports if we want to look at what's going on in different places. So that's just a little insight into the back end and what some of this will allow us to do.
So how often do you get dumps from DOT? That's where you get the data.
Yeah.
They just come.
Correct, yep, at least twice a month, because they give us a draft spreadsheet with draft, you know, minor changes, and then they usually give us a final one. And then, so there's a minor every month, and then there's the amendments that need to be voted on, I think quarterly, maybe 4 or so times a year. So it's a lot of spreadsheets coming from DOT that we upload and be able to track things.
What's nice is the software has been set up in such a way that when you upload new stuff, it doesn't overwrite the entire plan. It only touches the things that are changing.
Yeah.
So in addition to uploading it on its own as a revision or amendment, it also feeds into what's the current tip. And it knows to only look at the rows of the data that's, you know, in the new spreadsheet instead of starting over basically.
It's pretty slick.
Yeah, enough said, but I can personally attest to, in the old days, manually taking data all those attributes. And it was a nightmare. This is really good. So to be continued, type of thing. So I know it's getting late, so, and thanks Ryan and Emma. So any other NRPC project updates? Donna, you have anything or?
Just this month, there will not be an RCC meeting, so the next one will be February 26th. So mark that on your calendars, and at the next TTAC meeting, we'll have the flyer for you. We just found out this morning.
Yeah.
It was not
Is
gonna
that
be.
the one that was supposed to meet at the end of January?
Right, exactly, the 22nd.
Oh.
So that's not gonna happen. So it's been canceled.
Yeah. Thanks, Donna. So are there any municipal updates that anybody wants to talk about? Ben?
So at BOS last night in Hudson, some folks from DOT came out and let us know that the circumferential highway is being formally actually dissolved. The project has been languishing for I think about 30 years now approximately. So they're actually finishing, not doing the project and starting to sell off the parcels. I believe it's Hudson, Litchfield, Merrimack are the kind of primary affected towns. I don't think any other towns had. There might have been some in Nashua, but they're actually beginning the process now of offloading all of that land and completely kind of dissolving the project and unencumbering those parcels. So for a fair amount of towns in the area, it should be affecting them.
So goes the bridge.
Are they prioritizing how they're selling the parcels or who they're selling the parcels to?
Yes, so towns get first dibs. Kind of the order of who gets priority is the town gets first chance at them, then it's New Hampshire Housing. If it's an improved property, so because some of these actually have like single family or duplexes on them, the current tenants then get a chance, and if all three of them say no, then it goes out through just standard realty process and is sold on the market at fair market value.
I know.
Seriously.
Was that adjourned?
Are there any other municipal? It's,
Must be on his way home.
so how about state updates? William, do you have anything to add?
I don't have anything that we haven't already discussed.
Thanks, William. And Mac, I think you're all set. Okay. Lee, anything from federal highways?
Nope. Sorry, nope. I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. All right. If there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move.
And that's a unanimous motion and sensibility. Thank you guys.
Yeah, what's up? Well. Damn.
Thanks, Ryan. Hey, Jack,
Yeah.
put up the, yeah.
Yeah.
Wait till yeah, now.
Yeah.
My alley. Software, I love it.
Yeah.